Good night, good night, good night. Welcome to Real Talk, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope that we have some gentlemen that will be joining us this evening as we have our Real Talk Part 2 with the fabulous Julita Anthony. All the way out of Aruba. Sorry, what am I saying? Mixing up the islands right now. Let me see if Julita's on. So I'm adding her right away. Let's hope our internet connection holds up, guys. It's been a little shaky these days. So let's see what is going to happen. Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I am excellent. Excellent. I see you looking fabulous as always. So nice to have you back on board, Han. Welcome to Real Talk.
I'm excited. I was excited that people enjoyed it and that we can do it again.
I know, right? We got some good feedback from the last time, and we really thought about how we would be able to accommodate a session like this on a monthly basis, due to our schedules and other commitments, etc. And I think we settled for once a month.
Yes.
Once a month will give us, also time to explore if there's anything going on, any trends, and also we'll be able to be conservative, and respectful of our schedules, because you have a full hand going on, and you know me, I always move at 360 degrees at an hour. So respecting that and still willing to contribute, because I think that this is a real important cause to involve more of our peers, our women, of all shapes and ethnicities. Everybody and that is the real thing. So thank you for being on board once again. We've had
I'm
some
just glad
great
to be here.
questions. We've had some great questions through the week. I shared them with Julita earlier tonight so that she could have prepared more or less the answers, or where, how to have this dialogue about these specific questions that women, and I even had a man in between message me. I know, right? We still consider it a little bit of taboo to openly discuss sex, and I mean, it's 2020 though, like, when are we gonna let that go?
Well, I have to say, I had two guys who I know message me after the last time going, thank you so much for having this open conversation. And I actually learned a thing or two. And I was like,
Wow.
that's what we want. That's the whole point.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that as well. I think, being from a Caribbean culture, and women, of course, and not men, having this conversation, because men are always used to having the sex talk, and now the roles have changed, and I think it's very good to see that people of all walks of life can relate to the conversation, because at the end of the day, everyone has sex. It doesn't matter. I mean, that is part of our natural mechanism. It's life. It's part of humanity. So all right, guys. So I'm excited. So we're gonna get straight to it. There are a few questions in there that might be longer or shorter than others, depending on what the feedback is. And of course, remember to the audience, post in your questions as well as we go along. Me and Julita will try to keep up if something comes up through the feed, so that we can answer it as well accordingly and give you as much information and as practical information that you can actually learn from and put it into practice, because that is what we want. We want you to absorb out of this information and go to your partner and have a discussion and say, listen, I heard this and this and this, and we can try it, or we cannot, or we can have at least an open discussion about it. So Julita, are you ready?
Ready. Take
I'm
it. Take it away.
I'm taking it away. All right, so we're going to start with our few questions. As you know, normally we get some questions in advance. So we have about 7 to 8 questions that came in during the week in our personal inboxes. And the first one goes like this. how and when do you ask the right questions about pleasuring each other? I think people still find that to be a fragile, sensitive topic. Like, okay, how open am I supposed to be with my partner? Can I really tell them that I don't like this, or I don't like that, or I want more of that and I want more of this? So how do you approach a conversation, especially if your partner is not always receptive? Because I think that is the case here. If they're not receptive to that open discussion, then that makes the approach more challenging, right? So what would you say to creating a better approach to having that discussion with your partner?
Well, if we open it up from just the perspective of we're two partners together, we're trying to figure out what we like, what we don't like, without the added, yeah, I'll come back to that. Like without the added, I don't know if I want to discuss that. Let me say that. So without that, just two people who want to figure out, what do you like? Do you want it faster? Do you want it slower? Do you want a finger? Do you not want a finger? Do you want oral sex? Do you not want oral sex? Like all of that. Because we don't talk about it, it becomes sort of I'm just lying there and I hope you're gonna figure out what it is that I like by maybe how I move or the sounds I make, and I hope you understand, but maybe you don't, because maybe I'm quiet or maybe I don't really give you feedback. Um, so it's super essential to have these conversations, to actually ask, you know, I was reading this thing about sex. I read this and that. How do you feel about that? Are you interested in that? Would you like to ever do that? Would that be something that you'd like to try out together? Um, and in all of that, it always has to be very clear that you're not saying you did something wrong or you don't understand how I work or whatever, but more of an open, would you be interested? Could we try out this or that? I would like whatever because that will help me achieve my orgasm or be better pleasured while we are having sex. Now, when it comes to someone being closed off to the conversation, there are two things you can try. Like I would always say, have these conversations. Try to have them in like as relaxed moment as you can. So don't start to have this conversation when you're maybe arguing about something and then you go, yes, and you never know what to do. That's not going to work.
Where is
You're
that?
putting someone on defense from like the beginning, and that's not going to that's just really not gonna work. You might want to try this while you're having sex. So, for example, giving small pointers. Um, Move a little bit more to the left, or could you try this or that? Like, ask while the person is busy, because that active feedback makes it just a little bit easier to straight away start learning what you like. Um, but if you feel that is too much or too difficult, then have this conversation. Like just calmly try and discuss. So I'm not talking the hour after when you're already sitting in the living room and like doing completely something else, but right after you can still have this conversation about, did you like what I did? Did you enjoy this step I took? Things like that.
Awesome. So basically, what we're saying is let's not wait for it to compile, and then erupt into an explosion where you then blame your partner for not paying attention to your telepathy, because that is what you're saying. I want you to
Yeah.
via telepathy, understand my feelings and try to read me where we're going, where you know how it works. I mean, at the end of the day, men are natural, they need guidance as it is. So if you don't open your mouth and tell them, and vice versa as well, vice versa as well, because you have two people involved in a relationship. So it is important for both of us to be able to have this dialogue. And like you said, either in a relaxed setting where is not reflecting any argument, or right after you have had intercourse or intimacy with your partner, or during. Give them hints so that they could know, oh, well, the last time I
Yeah.
remember she told me that she liked it that way, so now I'm going to put that into practice and see if it has a better result, right? Ramunda is also saying, I think we need to start being more open with each other, and this should be a topic to discuss when you start a relationship. Then during the relationship, it's easier to address. Definitely. Definitely.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Um, and it's also very important to also give your partner feedback. So if you've had this conversation, if you then never say, I really liked what you did while we were having oral sex, your partner will not know that that was a good thing. So if you want to have this conversation, you also have to give feedback so that the other person knows this was nice, or this was good, or I enjoyed that.
Yeah, because you also don't want to give them the feeling that it was all bad. Because I mean to say, then you got to give them something to build up on. And if you focus only, we all know that when you're having an evaluation, you start with the positive stuff first, and then you go into the negative. So you look at it as the evaluation of whatever. When you evaluate on your job, when you're evaluating someone, it goes from that perspective. You start with a positive first, and then you say, but you know what, babe? I really would like if next time we could try it this way, because I realize that it gets me to a higher point, or whatever have you.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to start discussing lingo, sexual lingo, as normal as it is, talking about kitchen and cooking and whatever, you know?
For me personally, I always think it depends on the two partners. If you are uncomfortable with certain words, find your own words. That's fine. But personally, I'm like, just use the words that we have. We have a penis, we have a vagina. Like, just use those words and don't shy away from it. Because the more you shy away from it, the more you shy away from having conversations. Because it kind of feels, oh no, we can't say that to each other. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. We've passed that phase. We are beyond that phase now, so we need to be able to. And I have that too. At the beginning, I think everybody in a new relationship is skeptical of how much to say, because again, you have the judgmental factor. You don't want your partner to perceive you as like, okay, but she has done the world, and here I am thinking that I'm gonna surprise her, but she's ahead of the game, or he's again ahead of the game. So because we also tend to have that judgmental tendency behind of our thoughts. We think, oh, I can't give too much information because I don't know how it's going to be received. So that Ramon, could be one of the reasons why people also do not engage, so as in the early stages of the relationship. And it should be the contrary, because if it's somebody that you really want to spend your life with, and you have a serious relationship with, then we should put all of those cards on the table from the beginning, so that we know how we can move forward.
And honestly, even if it isn't a serious relationship, or it is just a fling or whatever, if you don't talk about the things you would like to receive, you can't receive them. Because, like we talked about last time, we're not mind readers. None of us. I mean, I would love for my job if I was a mind reader, but I'm not, and none of us are. So we need to talk to each other.
Definitely. So that is that. Let's move on to the second question. So just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, for those who came in, we just had the first question answered, or how to ask the right questions about pleasuring each other. Have an open discussion. Look for a relaxed setting where you can bring on the subject. Do it during intimacy or after you have already had it. Point the what you would like, but also give feedback about the good things. Right, Julita? That would be more or less in a nutshell. Great. All right. So our second question is like this. Should you speak to your partner about masturbation without making them feel offended as if they're not enough?
If you don't speak to your partner about masturbation, I don't know what to say to you. Honestly, I these are conversations you should be having. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people, like, the taboo about masturbation comes from church, comes from
Religious,
people
cultural.
exactly comes from being like, no, people who masturbate or self-pleasure are wanton. They're just, these ideas we have that are um, that surround the word masturbation. But one of the things that I think most people don't know is that masturbation in research has actually been linked to better health, better mental health, feeling more relaxed, feeling more self assured of yourself. And that's not just women or men, it's for humanity. That's how it works. So basically, there are a lot of um, benefits to masturbate. And if you want to masturbate, a lot of people think, yeah, but I'm in a relationship, so now we have duo play, and that means I can't have solo play. But I just pointed out all these good things about masturbation. People sleep better if they masturbate. Like, why would you not do it, even if you're in a relationship? Um, so basically, people need to understand that this is a conversation you should be able to have. Have it in a way that you're not going to be judgmental yourself. So don't step up to your partner and be like, well, I think you masturbate and I don't like it. Hmm. That's not going to work. Um, have this conversation very judgment free. So it's basically more of a, I was wondering if you masturbate, like, how do you feel about that? Is that something you do? Also, if you want to do it, have that conversation and tell your partner that's something you need. You can use the facts I just used in, again, mental health. You sleep better. You feel more self assured. Good points to be having sex with yourself, basically. But also, masturbation helps you figure out, what do I like? What do I not like? What would I prefer? Which makes it a little bit easier to explain that to your partner as well. And guys, there is nothing sexier than masturbating as a couple. This could be your foreplay. You could masturbate together. You could ask your partner to masturbate for you. Basically, making the sex you're having together even more enhanced because you're using things together.
I was going to the point of getting to of knowing yourself better, because that is actually one of the key things for you to get to the point where you understand your body and what it's asking for from you in order to be pleased, so that part definitely is a key element. I think from a very young age I understood that your to yourself before you could have translated to someone else, and that is what masturbation does for you, besides the additional added value that you mentioned, like mental health and help you relax and sleeps better. It just helps you understand as a person your sexuality, what makes you reach to that point of climax that we all want to get there, right? And I love the fact that you added that you
And
can do
I
it.
think I have one side note. Yes. I have one side note, and that would be, be careful. And what I mean with being careful is, let's say you have a specific technique that you use when you're masturbating, and it is something, let's say you have a vibrator that goes up to, I don't know what level, and it's a vibration that your partner could never recreate. In no shape or form could your partner ever recreate that. If you're solely depending on that to have your orgasm, you're selling your partner short as well, because your partner cannot help you with that. So, in that sense, try to have this conversation in which you look at, okay, but so I like this kind of stimulation, but how could we fit this into our relationship, in how we have sex together because I need this type of stimulation. If it's basically just a note to say, be careful if you're solely dependent on one thing. It has to be this porn movie, this particular scene, otherwise I cannot come. Then that means you're going to have problems with your partner.
Huh.
So in that sense, you really have to think about these things.
Wow. So, we don't even go as far as thinking about that as well, because then it becomes sort of like an addiction, because that is the only way that it could get you there. And what happens is your partner will never be able to compete with a five remote grade, vibrator that does, simultaneous things at the same time. That he has a penis. So, it's kind of like also asking him to reach for, I don't know, the Niagara Falls while he's at the river. It's not fair, you know? So we have to be very careful with that we don't jeopardize our relationship and how we make our partner feel, because we have become solely dependent on this masturbation element as well. I like the point that you made as well, Julita. Thank you for that, because that is actually very interesting. Yes, so thank you for those that are joining in as well, into the session of Real Talk tonight. I'm here with none other than Julita Anthony, psychologist and sex expert on different topics of sex behavior forms, and you name it. We can talk about this the whole night. But the main point is
Yeah.
that we're having a conversation about different topics that are relatable not only to women but just overall to relationships, partners, and just different perspectives of how men and women look at these things. All right, so our third question: what are your boundaries, if you have any, and does your partner know them? Or what are some of your boundaries that you should let your partner know, and how, if you have? So let's say you don't like something, or you have okay, I will absolutely not partake here in this because my religious belief or my cultural background or my grandmother tell me that I would die on the spot. Whatever have you, because we have that too.
Yeah. So boundaries are very, very, very important. Um, if you haven't had this discussion before you have sex, I'm a little worried, because in that sense, it means that you haven't discussed what is okay and what isn't okay. And so you're laying it basically on the other person to figure it out. That's one. And secondly, if a person then crosses your boundary, unwittingly, basically, because they don't know that that is a boundary for you, um, it jeopardizes the relationship, but it also makes someone feel bad, because if at that point you go, um, how dare you, my grandmother said I would die on the spot, you're also telling the other person that something they like or something they're attracted to is wrong because of how you feel about it, and you never discuss this beforehand. So that makes any sexual relation you have with that person afterwards a little bit fraught, from that point on. So these are things you want to discuss. You want to talk about, I really don't like these things. This and this is something I'd rather not do. Again, use words. Don't be vague. Don't be like,
Be specific.
well, yes, like don't use concrete examples so that the other person actually knows what you mean. I'm not saying that during sex you cannot realize that you have a boundary. That's possible, of course, because there might be things you've never thought of, and the other person has, because they have more experience, or for them it's a different kind of way of looking at it. So I'm not saying that that can't happen, but everyone knows for themselves at least a little bit, I'd like this, or I won't like this, or I've tried this, I'd rather not. Having said that, also think about, what is a boundary? Is it a hard no? Or is it a, I've never tried it, and so I think it's a boundary, but maybe I'd like to try it.
Ah,
Think about these things and discuss these with each other.
that was my moment right there, because you're like, I think it's a boundary, but because I've never done it, I might actually like it if I do it. So maybe it's just a fact that I don't know. It's the unknown. And for me, it sounds like a boundary, or it was taught, or, at some point in my life that it was a boundary. But now I'm at the point where you like it. And who knows, maybe I am setting up myself to miss out on a great experience, because I think it's just the know what it is. So that is actually a very interesting point.
Exactly.
Awesome. So just to recap, if you have boundaries, if you know what they are, be specific, discuss them with your partner, let them know, give them concrete examples about what their boundaries are, what are you willing to accept or not. Um, and if it's something that you have never tried, also let them know, let him or her know, like, okay, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's a boundary or not, but because I don't know what the outcome is going to be, I'm a bit skeptical. So maybe we can try it in doses, in stages, until we figure out if it's something that I will enjoy with together. That might be something that might mid standpoint that you can have with your partner as well, and do research. Do research, read about it, look it up. If it's a proposition from your partner and you don't know what it is, look it up, research it together. That might actually be enticing or
Yeah.
very good and added value to your relationship.
Yeah. And I see a question. Um, what happens if for you it's a hard no, but your partner is really into it? So that's a hard one, because if it's a hard no for you, it's a hard no. That is just your boundary. You cannot, I do not condone crossing a boundary just for someone else, because if it's your hard no, it's your hard no. Only thing I would ask for yourself is to really consider, is it my hard no, or is it from a place of, I've never tried this, I was always told I shouldn't, that kind of stuff. Because then you might be missing out on something that you might actually enjoy. But if you know this is your hard no, then that is something you will just have to tell your partner. I'm really sorry. I understand where you're coming from, but for me, that is a hard no.
But let me play devil's advocate here, because you know that relationships, and men and women, can be very conniving. So let me play the devil's advocate here, and let's say that I know what my hard no is, like Janice is saying, she knows what her hard no is, and your partner then says, well, you know what, I'm gonna go get it somewhere else then, because I cannot do with that hard without it. It's part of me. It's the element that I've always had in my relationships, past and whatever. And I need it in order to feel complete as a man or slash woman, whatever it is you want to see. What then? Because that is another process.
Then my first thought is, you have one manipulative partner, and you might want to think about the relationship as a whole. Because if you have a partner who doesn't listen to your hard no, you're basically getting into the it's becoming a cross between almost having to do something against your will, which technically, looking at it, would be rape if you would do something against your will. And trust me, you can be raped by a partner, because simply if
Yes,
you said no, it's still rape. So in any sense, if your partner says you have to do this because it's something I want and otherwise I'll go find it somewhere else, you might want to have a conversation about your relationship,
yeah,
because that type of person might not be the one for you.
correct. And I totally agree, because if we cannot have that honest, open conversation, if you value me or if you value us based just on that sole thing that you cannot get, because it's my heart no for whatever experience or whatever belief I have, then it means that that I'm actually just an object. I'm being, I'm being objectified to please
Yeah.
you in our relationship without you having any regards for my feelings or my heart. No, and that is something very difficult to accept from someone that you love, you know?
Yep.
I think it would be very detrimental to your relationship to have that analysis and come out with a result saying this is not the person that I should be with. Because come on, if my heart no means that I'm going to lose my relationship, then we never had anything worth fighting for.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So this is a great, great, great feedback. I think looking at how manipulative both men and women can be during relationships to get what they want to for their own personal satisfaction. It's always important to go back to yourself, your self-value, your self-worth, what you're bringing to the table into that relationship. And if that is dignified or quantified by one act that you cannot fulfill to your partner, then definitely we're going to have to reevaluate the relationship. It's that simple. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. We're moving on to question number 4. So this specific question was about the art of seduction. Yes, the art of seduction. How do Basically what they wanted to ask was, how do you create a seductive ambiance with someone that is accustomed of just rushing into intimacy? So
Oh,
fast foreplay, fast days,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
they want it fast and they want it to get there. How do you create that environment for you and your partner, showing them like, listen, we could have a dinner, we could dance, even if it's home, can we move to step 1, 2, 3, 4 and feel that adrenaline of seduction that we all love at some point in our life, and that is also needed as an element of our sex life and our relationship.
Well, first of all, that comes like one of the things you can think of is a date night. And I mean this in the sense that um, I would like to be the one in charge of our date night. And I want to um, make the deal with you that tonight we do everything the way I would like to do it. So I'm going to set up candles, I'm going to make us dance together, I'm going to do all these things because that's how I would like to do it one time. So basically, you bargain for like a let's try this out. Um, because the thing is, one partner might rush into it, but they might have rushed into it simply because um, they always have done that. In all relationships, they've always done that. That's just how it works. Um, and it's never been their way of figuring out, oh, wait, you can maybe take your time. So if you try it out together, it's like a nice experiment to figure out, hey, do you like this? Do I like this? Um, it also has to do with just setting, again, a question. I need this. If I want to be able to um, achieve an orgasm, to have a good night, to have sexual pleasure, I need this whole sexual ambiance to be good. And these are the things I'd like to set up for it. But you can start off with just having this is my night. We're going to do it my way. Let's figure out if this fits with you as well. Um, Also, having an open conversation about why the other partner might rush helps because there might be reasons for why the other partner rushes. Um, it might be that that they don't feel that sensual, for example, and don't actually know what to do. What is sensual? What do you need? What are moves I can do? Isn't that just, isn't sex just having sex, like just the penetration part and then we're done? So these are conversations you have to have with your partner for the partner to be able to explain also like maybe why they rush.
Okay. So basically create that moment. If they're not letting you, if it's not happening naturally, either which way, try to find a moment where you can control that and implement some sort of seduction into it. And maybe just show them, because that's a guidance. Guide them through it and let them know while you're saying um, what is happening. And it is true. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but sometimes there's just one moment that you would like to be seductive with all the, the fanfare and the fireworks, and other times not. But just be specific with your partner about that time that you want the whole 9 yards, and that you want to have that elevation in your relationship, because maybe it's once a month, maybe it's for your birthday, maybe you want it as a surprise, maybe you want it when you come from work, whatever. I mean, you just have to have that open and candid conversation with your partner about it. Let's see. I think Martin said something. That said,
Yeah.
not every intimacy.
Don't,
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say, don't be afraid to do it. To sometimes give your partner the quickies or whatever, because sometimes that's what you need or want, or it's a two-way street. You're in a partnership, so it means you cannot always have what you want, and the other person cannot always have what they want. So you kind of like try and meet in the middle.
Correct. Martin is saying, that said, not every intimacy interaction has to be a whole production. I agree. Sometimes a quick 10 to 15 session is all that's needed. Other times you can make it a date for play. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree that it's not all the time you have all of that time to create this scenario. And sometimes seduction might be me getting seduced in the bathroom. I mean, it all depends. It all depends.
Seduction doesn't necessarily mean all the candles have to be on. I have to wear lingerie. I have to be all this. Seduction can also just mean whatever the hell the two of you thought of as being seduction. For some people, that's literally their partner walking into the house and being like, I want you now. Boom, done. Let's go. So it doesn't have to be anything special, just as long as it is something that seduces the two of you.
Correct. And I think that's a very valid and important point, because everybody's point of seduction is different and perceived different. So you have to realize that, like you said, in a partnership, we both are looking for different things, but we want those things to enjoy them together, right? So that is important to understand as well. I think foreplay is definitely something that can get you to that point of seduction. I sometimes And there are times that you can literally have an orgasm with just kissing your partner. Just deep sensual kisses, long 15, 20, half an hour of foreplay, and fondling, and that can get you to the point as if you've had a marathon of sex, believe you me. It really can.
But even like don't underestimate, foreplay doesn't have to be you're touching me. So it has to be a physical thing. If my partner would start texting me while I'm at work and starts texting me things that are telling me that by the time I get home, we will be having sex, and in such a way that that fits with the two of us, that's foreplay, because that has already started getting the motor running and getting me like, oh, can I go home yet? Is it time to leave? Like, what time is it?
I love it. That is a good one. So, ladies and gents, take notes. Take notes. I mean, it's the little things that matter and accumulate, and also, serve as a catalyst to ignite that engine. Right? It could be little things. So that is a great, great, great valid point as well, Julita. Let's move on, because you know that Instagram is very rude, and within 1 hour we will
Yeah.
get caught, and we'll have
Yep.
to restart this again. Okay, so this one is also a very interesting question. How do you tell your partner that you want to involve uh, sex toys without making them feel that um, their sexual behavior is not enough? And would you recommend, as a psychologist, to incorporate sex toys during your intimacy as well?
Definitely. If it's something, I'm going to start with the second question. If it's something you want and your partner wants, I would always say incorporate sex toys. There are sex toys that range from just about anything. If you're Whether you're a heterosexual couple, a homosexual couple, it doesn't matter. There are sex toys for just about anything. Um, Sex toys can enhance a relationship, so they can um, deepen something that you already had. They can make it an added extra, a bonus. Um, they don't have to be something that when you start using it, that means that the sex you had previously was bad. No, it just says, hey, I've seen this and that. I am actually quite intrigued by it. Would you like to try it out? There are sex toys that are for just the female partner. There are sex toys that are just for the male partner. There are sex toys that you can use
For both.
together. So there is so much choice of sex toys that there's no reason to be afraid of trying something. Very important in this is, though, that you make sure that when you have this conversation is kind of important. So in this sense, in this case, I would not say have it after sex, because that kind of sounds like, well, that was great, but I need a toy because you ain't good enough. So that is not a good time to have this conversation. What is a good time is when both of your motors are running, you're excited to then talk about, because this is basically a sexual fantasy. So talk about, so I've always thought about this or that. Would you be interested in trying this out? Would you be interested in getting something together? Go to a sex shop together. Again, we were just talking about foreplay. How great of a foreplay is that? Figuring out what you'd like to do and just looking at the toy, buying the toy, all of that. It's like going on a holiday and being able to pack your bags in advance and check out on the internet what place you're going to. That's all the excitement for what you're going to do.
The adventure.
So in this sense, in this case, I would say have this conversation during while both of your motors are running, well, you're both excited, have this conversation. Make sure that you let your partner know this is not about you. It's not that you do anything wrong. It's not that I'm missing something or lacking something. I would just like to enhance on our relationship. So have that conversation, because you don't want your partner to feel like, oh, you're telling me right now that it's all wrong. Um, that is important. Um, to add to that, search for things together. Find out what kind of toys you'd like to use together. Um, it can be something for just the woman or just the man. That doesn't really matter. But if you've looked for it together, it doesn't sound like I'm trying to replace you by having a toy.
Correct.
Because
Which is,
it's not
I
replacing,
guess,
it's adding.
exactly. And I think that is where it gets tricky, that people do not know how to communicate that to the partner. It's not a replacement. It's just something that is gonna excite us more, help us. So that might be a conversation that you should be able to have that conversation as well, open heartedly with your partner, is what I believe. We had a question from Martin where he's asking, do you find there's a misconception that having sex means or requires insertion? I'm assuming that he means penetration, right?
I definitely run into this all the time. Why? There are, of course, women who have problems with penetration or insertion. It could be already the insertion of a finger. It could be even tampons for some women are just impossible to wear. Um, in this sense, it then automatically becomes like, well, then we didn't have sex. And that's, of course, crazy, because you can have sex in so many ways. There are so many ways out there that you can enjoy sex together, which have nothing to do with insertion or penetration. again, it is a conversation you have to have, because if you're in a heterosexual relationship and your male partner might be like, well, what do I get out of it? You'll still have to think of ways to make it pleasurable for the both of you. So everyone has to be happy with whatever it is you're doing. But you're not limited. That's why we have mouths and fingers and everything. Like,
Imagination. Imagination.
imagine, we have so much that we can use to enjoy sex that have nothing to do with penetration.
I totally agree. And you have to also sometimes, even as a, what I would say, like as a project, also something that you can try is withhold that penetration for a few sessions. And then if it, of course, if it's not health related, and then you hold it for a few sessions and you'll be surprised the explosion that you'll have like 3 4 5 days after, when you're actually having that full intercourse and intimacy, how, you know, how good of an experience it will be, because you've it's kind of like you're teasing your way into that final moment for the specific days. No, we're not gonna do any of that for the next 5 days. We're gonna do a lot of foreplay, and a lot of teasing, a lot of imagination, a lot of fantasies and seduction and dirty talk and blah blah blah. And then when I get to that point on day number 5, we're gonna bring it on. So that could also be a nice little project to do with your partner, just to see how can withhold that. And it might be in the 3rd day, maybe one of you give in and say, listen, frig that, I'm not going to make it to the 5th day, we need to do this today. You know, so just experiment a little bit, make it fun, make it a project. I know it sounds a little cliche when you say make it a project, but it is what you're doing during a partnership. What you do, you learn, you experiment, you know, you put things in place, trial and error, like anything else in life.
And the only added thing I would like to note on this one is that, of course, the patients I do eventually see are the ones that have found that their partner insists on penetration. And so for that reason, they stop wanting to have any intimacy, because that has to be end goal. So for them, I would say, no, there is no end goal. The end goal is just to be pleasured, both of you, and it doesn't matter in whatever way you do that. So this is a conversation you can have with your partner. If you realize, for me, it's not going to work out to have penetration for whatever reason, I would suggest go and find help, figure out what might be wrong. But if you've done all that and you know that it just doesn't work for you, okay. But then at least figure out what would be pleasurable for the both of you, but don't have it as an idea of, yeah, but if we don't have penetration, then we can't have sex, then that's it.
Yeah. Correct, correct. I think just being able to have that communication openly makes such a difference, Julita. You know, just being able to communicate to your partner on that level already fixes at least 50% of the problem, because you can actually talk about it, right? It, the what's
Definitely.
and the whatnot. So I think that is the first road, should always be being able to communicate those uncertainties to your partner. That is, for me, that is rule number 1. You know, and whatever the
Yeah.
outcome may be, you should be able to also have a stand strong enough to know that, okay, if this is not the outcome that I was expecting, how are we going to get to that outcome? But together, you know, work it out.
Yeah.
Don't just bash it
And
out
that,
one time.
exactly. And that means that you as a partner, that also means you have to accept some things that are hard
Compromise.
sometimes to, but you will have to figure out how to work through that together, because if you keep on putting that unspoken idea of, yeah, but eventually it'll be our end goal, the other person notices and the sex will not get better from it.
There you go. Awesome. All right. So, as you know, me and Julita both are advocates for self love and plus size movement, and we've been involved in anything that has to do with accepting your body, shape, size, color. As a woman, man, or whatever gender, you are specifically, it doesn't matter. For me, it's self love first and learning to accept your body as it is. So, one of my plus size sisters, and I want to touch back on this question because I thought it was very important. Um, as a fat girl having sex, how do you overcome that stigma? you know because of course it's always, fat girls should see sex or having sex as a favor being done to them, or we should settle for we should yeah, exactly, we should settle for whatever, we shouldn't have any standards, because if a guy is sleeping with me and I'm 300 pounds, well, it means that he's doing me a favor because he could be with somebody else, right? And so how do you move from that stigma? But that's one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is you as a person, as that fat girl, how are you going to overcome the fear of having sex without the lights being turned off? How are you going to
Mm.
overcome the fear of buying lingerie and wearing it for your man and modeling it? And in your mind, you are just as hot or more than Pamela Anderson at, Baywatch. So because it is a mental switch, however you look and twist it, it is a
Yeah.
mental something. So how do you overcome that stigma, as for having sex as a fat person, girl? I mean, she said girl because of course is a woman, but as a fat person overall, how do you progress into a more acceptable uh, sexual behavior for yourself, and then translate that to your partner, of course, that you have demands, not because you're fat you're going to set up for a 3 minutes brother, or not because you're fat you're going to set for lame sex and you're not going to have your standards, you know what I mean? So how do you move to that?
Both cases, both questions you asked me, it's all about the acceptance of yourself. So, this is a topic I actually discussed back when I did actually where we met when I discussed sex as a plus size person. What do you want to do? Like, how do you do it? And the main thing is, if I don't accept myself in the way I am, how am I going to convince the other person that they have to like me the way I am and ask them for things I want because I feel like I don't deserve it? So, how are they going to give it to me and show me that I deserve it? So, that's not how any of it works. I have to start with me. Um, One of the things I said is you have to become comfortable with naked you. If you're not comfortable with naked you, how are you going to ask someone else to be comfortable with naked you? You can have a partner who's going to be like, "Oh, you're gorgeous. You're the most beautiful person I've seen." If you don't look into that mirror and you're comfortable with you, it's not going to land. Now, I'm not saying that you have to become someone who's like, "I am the most beautiful person on this world." That's not how body positivity works. I personally really like the term body neutrality. Basically, just saying I'm fine with how my body is. I'm not saying it's the most beautiful body in the world. It's, I just, it is. It does what I want it to do. It functions the way I want it to. That's the most important thing. So start with being comfortable naked. Be naked in front of your mirror. Sit there. Look at yourself. What is it you like? What is it you don't like? Start walking around in your house naked. I mean, if
Guilty.
you have neighbors, maybe maybe close the curtains, but like walk around naked because you have to be comfortable with your naked body. Otherwise, you cannot comfortably present it to someone else. You're gonna feel very, very uncomfortable otherwise. Um, from that point on, you can actually introduce your naked self to your partner. And what is important in that is we have this tendency, and when I say we, I mean plus size people have this tendency to make themselves smaller, or at least try to make themselves smaller, or try to make themselves disappear. which is not how any of it works. You are glorious. You are just what you are. Don't try and disappear. So it's not about, oh, let's see, I can't do this position or that position because then you'll see my tummy, or then you'll see this, or then you'll see that. No, if that's the position I want to do because that's the one that's going to give me the most pleasure, then that's the one I'm going to do. If your partner says, oh, I love you on top, and you're like, oh no, I'm going to crush him because I'm big. If your partner said, I love you on top, that's
What
the
more
end of the
validation do you
conversation.
need? Yeah.
That's the end of the conversation. So try and get out of your head and actually give your partner the space to give you a compliment, because if you break yourself down, the harder it's going to become for your partner to actually compliment you. For partners, be very specific in what you're going to say to what you find attractive in your plus size person, be it a man, be it a woman. What do you find attractive? We all need this validation. But if you just say, I'm beautiful, well, that's great. But I would like you to say, oh, I love how your butt looks, or you have the most beautiful breasts, or whatever else. But focus on the things you like and be very concrete about it. But make sure that you are comfortable with yourself first. If you cannot be naked around you, you're not going to be able to stand for what you want in bed.
That is the key. That is why I walk around naked around my children. And they look at me crazy, but they have gotten used to it. They're like, oh, mommy's naked. Because they have to understand that I'm fine with my naked bodies, and they are going to have to accept their bodies as well. So it is kind of like a indoctrination for them, especially my son being on the heavier side, that he understands his body type, you know. And that is something that it didn't took me so long, because again, I had a good foundation with my mom. But it's important for you to have this discussion with your children as well. That is probably another topic that we can talk on another time. But anyways, we're going to cut off here, and we're going to come back because Instagram is going to cut us shortly. We're going to finish up that question, take one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up for the evening. All right, so we'll be back in a few seconds.
Sounds good.